What are you gonna do?
I can't complain about the computer.
As long as it works.
from stone cold to use it on the keyboard, it's like 9 seconds.
Hey,
What more do you
That's
want?
exactly. There's nothing wrong with that.
I hate slow computers.
Don't
Everybody
we
hates
all?
slow computers nowadays because you expect them to move as quick as you do.
Mine always do.
If mine moved as quick as I do, mine would be slow.
But it'd be reliable.
My computers are faster than I am.
Well, I was working in IT before I retired, and I always had the latest and greatest toys. I didn't have to pay for them.
Yeah, I've been thinking about a new laptop. The one I use for graphics work is getting old and tired, I think.
I was never a big fan of laptops.
Hmm.
They cost
Well-
too much and they're always slower.
It works out well for me. It fills a need, and it's
But that's the key point. If that's the case, then it's great if it does that. Absolutely.
yeah, it's not. I could take it on the road if I needed to, and it's not that much. They've gotten a lot closer to some of the desktops, actually. So I haven't yet exactly pulled the plug on a new one, but I'm getting closer. I've been looking around. So, money, money, money.
That's all it takes.
That's right.
Hmm.
Got the money and get anything you want.
Almost.
Yeah, it's looking like what I need is going to be something like $1,500. So, yeah,
Good evening, Brent.
good. Hey, Brent.
You're muted. We see your lips moving.
Oh, sorry. Good to see you
There you
guys. How you
Yeah,
doing?
how you doing?
Good evening, Jim.
Hi, guys.
Jeff.
Hello.
Did you go out hunting yesterday, Bart?
I did not. I
Oh.
couldn't go yesterday.
Yeah.
I had to take my wife up to my younger son's house in Harwington for a baby shower parade, and then come home and spend 3 hours on Zoom.
Ah. It was,
It's quite a hunt.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, I didn't even know that part of town existed.
that's pretty nice over there.
Yeah, it was, but the clue didn't help. It sent me miles off track, but finally got there.
No, I didn't hear a clue.
Yeah, when it was right at the end of time anyway. So he says we're on what was it, Whirlwind Hill Road.
Yeah.
So I had to get out the map of Wallingford and say, where the heck is Whirlwind Hill Road?
It's where the
And I
vineyards
looked
are.
and I said, well, I'm here and Whirlwind Hill Road is over there, miles, So I had to get on 91 and travel way down from where I was and then get off and then go up and up and up and up and up into the hills and finally came to the place.
Farm country out
Evening,
there.
Lou,
Oh,
Ryan.
yeah.
Yeah, I was lucky. I got a couple of whiffs of the fox coming down Dead Man's Hill by Coles there, and it seemed to indicate it was off to the east, so I headed that way instead of
Yeah.
continuing south, and I went east out 68 on that.
Well, everywhere I went, I would take a reading and I get these weak little blips, not enough to get a solid bearing on, just kind of kicking you in this direction or that direction. And, so it was challenging to say the least.
Yeah, I was following the Doppler, and I didn't make a lot of wrong turns actually, and still took me. I didn't get there till 11:30, I guess.
I think what it was is he was in a very high spot, but then everything sort of drops off. So he's up here, you're down here, and the signal is just barely going down to where we were. Because like I said, I think I was picking up little blips occasionally or the reflections of it from someplace else. I never got a good solid tone on it.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good spot.
Yeah. Well, now that we know about it.
It'd be a lot easier if he hid in the same spot every week, you know?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Take all the fun out of it.
Having that Doppler kind of takes half the fun out of it.
Well, I
No,
think
it
Dave's,
doesn't.
I think Dave started giving the Fox to other people because we kept threatening to put a tracker on his car so we could find him that way.
Finding that 1 milliwatt Fox is fun with the Doppler. It walks right up to it.
Yeah.
It's like waving a wand.
Hmm.
Here I am.
What are the guys using for Doppler? What sort of setup?
It's not really a Doppler. It's a time differential.
Time of arrival? Okay.
Yeah, it basically 2 vertical dipoles that go to some fancy little electronics that generate a phase difference and an audio tone in relation to that. To give
Cool.
you direction left or right.
When the 2 antennas are in theory exactly perpendicular to the signal source, it nulls out the tone.
Right, there's no phase difference.
They're
Okay.
they're very accurate because even though we would probably never have such an acute accuracy, but those things, the electronic circuit knows. You could just rotate that. We call it Doppler, but you rotate one beam towards the other and it knows, no, this antenna is closer than that one.
Wow.
I'll tell you how sensitive it is. There are times when you cannot hear the Fox. I've opened the squelch and you just hear raw hash, and you do that with Dave's Doppler, and it can find the signal in that raw hash, and it'll give you a direction.
Yeah, my Doppler on the truck is it's actually 8 whips that rotate around, electronically rotate, and that always hears. I have a second HT because the audio from the 1 HT goes straight into the Doppler magic box, and that always hears first before the other HT starts hearing the signal. I always get readings first, and when I start hearing the Fox on the second HT, I know I'm getting closer.
Yeah. I use a little Kenwood HT on my Doppler device, and it's got a cute little button on it. You press the button and it opens the squelch completely. And when you can't find a signal, you do that, and it almost always finds something.
And what are they 100% home brew, or their kits, or what?
Both.
Dave, NZ1J makes them.
He is an electronic engineer, so he devised the circuit and engineered a circuit, and the darn thing works. It's very accurate.
I might have
Yeah.
seen his webpage. What is it, NZ1?
Jay,
November Zulu 1 Juliet.
Oh, okay. I think I've seen his web pages. Cool.
Yeah, he had what do you have, 10 PC boards made in China, and made up some units. So
he's made several revisions. The current revision works really well.
Current revision and the first iteration that worked perfectly for me. If you remember, Bart,
Yes.
that one seemed to work.
Do they only work on 2 meters, or will they work on 440?
I think his only works on 2 meters.
It should work.
No, that's right, because you gotta lash up an HT to the darn
Right.
thing.
Yeah, yeah.
it shouldn't matter.
Rob, we should see if we could hook one up to a drone.
Ah, wow,
Next
What a-
project, right?
what a great idea.
Ah, there we go.
How
There
much?
it is.
How much weight can that DJI you got? How much can that thing hold?
I haven't tested it yet, but I did buy a little add-on hook a
I
remote
remember-
control release.
I remember that.
Yeah, for, if anyone needs a dipole hung up, that's why I bought it.
I will
What
take,
kind of DJI is it?
What is it? The Pro 2?
Mavic Air
It's
Pro? Or
Yeah,
is it
Mavic
Pro?
Air Pro 2. Yeah, medium size. It's pretty big.
Yeah, no, I fly one of those for work.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah,
I haven't
Bart,
put
Bart
any
was just,
attachments on it.
what was that, Brett?
I haven't put any attachments on it or tried to pull an antenna up, but it'd be fun.
I don't know the weight limit. I have to look it up.
I suppose you could get some small weights, known weights, and just add them to the thing and just try to do a vertical lift and see at what point it can't lift anymore. And that gives you an idea of what it would carry.
Mhm.
You'd have to adjust for, in flight because the thing's going to oscillate and drag. But you can get a pretty good idea of what the thing could lift that way.
Well, some of those drones can, they weigh 20 pounds and they can lift 35.
Yeah.
But you're spending some serious cheddar for those things.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that would cut down your operating time too.
Well, those things, they do a lot of, they not only carry camera equipment, they can carry like agricultural spray products and, bug juice that you're spraying on your plants or whatever. And
The bigger Pro ones have these monster batteries too.
yeah,
It's like they still only get about half-hour flight time.
it's amazing how that constant stays the same. It's always about 35 minutes. Well, they claim 35 minutes. It's probably reality like 15 or 20.
Yeah, mine claims 30 and it's about 20.
So what burning issues do our new guys have this evening that we can answer?
Yeah. Any questions?
Do I have to go to work tomorrow?
No, you don't have to go to work.
All
Yes,
right.
you do,
Thanks.
because
See you
I'm
later.
depending on my social
You give them my
security.
phone number, Jeff, and I'll cut you right out. No problem.
All right.
Of course, I'll tell you, don't come back the next day or the next day or the next day either, but
Probably.
You know what might be an interesting group of speakers if I can arrange it, particularly given the interest in fox hunting here with the group. There's a group called Stratofox. They're a group of hams. It's a group they've been around for 25 years. That they're fox hunters, but they specialize in recovery of high altitude rockets and balloons. They work out in the desert out in Mojave and Black Rock Desert. And they specialize in nearly impossible finds when you have a balloon that's up, 150,000 feet and it bursts and its payload's going to drift, tens of miles, or rocketry, a lot of high power rocketry where you have things that they're a group of hams that have specialized in fox hunting, but the most difficult fox hunts. And that might be an interesting topic to see how they go about literally finding a needle in a haystack. A lot of this we were flying out in Marc-Warg, would go into, we would flying stuff into space. And what we would do, we would embed in the shroud lines of the rockets, we would have these 1 milliwatt falconry transmitters, the little transmitters you strap on the leg of a falcon or a pigeon or something like that. They put out, designed to run for, 30 to 60 days. So it's very little power. And what we would do is have those embedded in the shroud lines of the parachutes. And when the rocket reached apogee and started to come back down, we would use a linear shape charge to literally cut the rocket in half and allow the parachutes to come out. The rocket itself was perfect shielding, right? Because it's an aluminum tube. So we couldn't hear anything until the rocket actually cracked itself in half and the parachutes come out. And the drift on these things would be 20, 30, 40 miles and out into mountain ranges and crazy environments. And these folks were the volunteer team to help us track things that were nearly impossible to track. So anyway, given this group's interest in fox hunting, this would be like fox hunting, on steroids. It's extreme adventure fox hunting.
So you're an amateur rocketer or rocketeer, but so you got any contacts towards that? I mean, how would we proceed with that? Because that's definitely something I'm interested in.
They're brilliant. Oh yeah, they're just we've become friends over decades now of working together. They're all on the West Coast. Most of them are based out of they're all Silicon Valley tech heads, right? They're ham radio operators that are brilliant engineers. They work in cybersecurity. They work in, advanced development, but they're hams at heart. And what they do on the weekends is help the rocketry community and the ballooning community to track stuff. So I could call them up and see if anyone would be interested. They're fascinating people. They're the really cool people, but at their core, they're hams. They just like doing something. It's an extreme hobby. They take the fox hunting to an extreme. So
I'm sure some of their techniques would be of interest to us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, like, for an activity meeting, how we're doing,
Yeah.
we're all on Zoom these days. So
Yeah,
I think it's kind of a dovetail for us.
That would be
Absolutely.
interesting. And you're right, the advanced techniques that they use, it would be interesting, or just the methodology. They're very methodical and pre-positioning people. And they will very engineering minded. So I'll make a couple of calls or emails and see if one or two of the guys would love to.
Thanks. I got a follow-on question though.
Sure.
So for your shape charge, what did you use to detonate that? Did you use telemetry?
No, we had igniters we had 4 igniters spaced at 30 seconds apart that would ignite the shape charge, but it was all on a timed system.
No, so you were timing it.
So everything we knew, once the rocket would leave the ground, the G-force would start all the timers in the entire machine. And so that's what myself and Rod Lane worked on mostly in the group here in Connecticut. And so at, I think it was 230 seconds, the rocket was just past apogee. It would fire the first igniter and everything had quad redundancy. So we had multiple igniters. If that one didn't work, another 15 seconds, it would try and ignite the shape charge. If that didn't work, 15 seconds.
You must have developed a lot of data. I mean, because you seem like you know exactly when all this stuff's happening.
Yeah, because we knew where it would be in space. We didn't, where it would be in flight based on some really advanced modeling. So we basically knew to the second where the vehicle would be. We also had GPS on board, multiple GPS systems, but those were mostly to record various aspects of the flight. There's some interesting things with GPS. We have these GPSs that we can buy off the shelf, and then there's kind of even military grade GPS systems. But inherent in every chip that you buy in the US that's legal, they have a restriction built into them, so they can't be used as a guidance system for a missile. So the US government, in every chip that's sold in the US, has a top speed. As soon as it reaches a certain speed, it has to shut off legally. And also when it's at a certain altitude, it's supposed to shut off. There was all these built-in things, so they can't be used as a guidance system. So we had to work around that a lot, not to crack it, but to use, it was at various speeds and altitudes that the systems, they're called COCOM restrictions. If you Google that, you'll find what the US government has, so that it's, any chip, because you can buy a GPS chip, eBay or whatever, but any chip that you find that's sold in the US has to have these restrictions built in, or they're illegal. And the government comes down hard on it because they don't want someone making missiles out of GPS chips. So there's a lot of interesting things. So that's why we couldn't use it to find the rocket, because we'd lose signal pretty quickly with the rocket, because we would pass through some of these particular restrictions as we're flying at Mach 4, Mach 5, and well beyond the restrictions that the government allows. So we had to use old-fashioned analog pings from the falconry, birding to track a vehicle that just flown into space. And so it was very how to use kind of old school techniques in a very sophisticated vehicle. So anyway, I don't know. I'm just babbling here. I don't know if anybody's interested in this stuff, but it's amateur. It's the blend of amateur radio and amateur rocketry.
How big were the rockets?
They were about 20 feet tall on average, 18, 19, 20, 21 feet.
Oh, wow.
They about 10 inches in diameter, and about 2/3 of that is fuel. It's ammonium perchlorate based fuel. It's basically the same fuel composition that used on, remember the space shuttle boosters, similar formula. We would actually mix those, we make those motors ourselves. So because we all had, we had ATF permits and a lot of background checks. If you wonder about me, I've had, it's been very interesting when we're really into this and the government was taking us very seriously that we were going to fly something into space. The level of scrutiny that we had here and with each of us, I've had very interesting. I was profiled by the FBI that came to my house here in Farmington. Very interesting experience when you have the men in black show up to your house and sitting around at the living room table and asking you all kinds of questions about your background. But actually, they were really chill. It was really strange. They literally drove up in a black car with tinted windows. I mean, just like on TV. And they come to the door. It's like right out of Hollywood. And there were 3 of them. One was FBI. There was another one who didn't say a word, but was clearly the profiler. And there was another person taking notes. And they interviewed me. But what they did right off the bat says, look, they said, everybody gets nervous when we come into the house. They tried to diffuse things and said, don't worry about it. We're not really looking into your background. We don't care if you got high when you're in high school or college. Don't worry about any of that stuff. We're just going to ask you some basic questions. And really, they kind of made it very easy. But it was kind of freaky having them, about 20 feet away in the dining room table. And but what they're doing is, if you think about it, they did a really good job of making sure, I was legit and all of our team members were legit. Because if you have it, something that's flying like this is a rocket, but when it's like this, it's a missile, right? Yeah. And things that we could fly 70 or 80 miles high could also do that this way. Yeah. And we're carrying, the rocket weighs 700 or 800 pounds and carries a payload. Our payload was electronics and some personal items, but it could easily have been other things. So they took us very seriously, which makes you feel good as an American that the government is keeping an eye on people like us that are playing with high explosives and rocket engines and some really sophisticated stuff. But it's
You go around and talk to your neighbors too.
Oh, they did a lot of interviewing. A lot of background checks. I mean, we all had to go through really significant background checks, to get my ATF, explosive permit. That was pretty significant. But again, they're doing their job and kind of makes you feel good. Once you kind of get over this is kind of weird, but after you get over that, it makes you feel good that you're being vetted as much as you are. So anyway, I could talk about rockets and all day, but
Eric, I have a quick question for you. Maybe you know. So you mentioned the restrictions of the military grade GPS. Is it true that they are also much more accurate down to the inch, or is that a myth?
No, basically the answer is yes. I mean, the stuff that we get off the shelf that we can buy, not only do they have these restrictions, they're also kind of fuzzed out, right? The resolution is padded so that you can't get as the resolution that the military could have when they're guiding something to a target and they got to hit something within a foot, right? So yeah, for ordinary walking around and being within 2 or 3 feet, I always find that's pretty cool anyway. But yeah, this stuff is much more accurate than that when it's the military grade stuff.
Cool.
I got a question for you. So the statement that a GPS receiver makes has a lot of data on it. It not only has positional data, it's got time data and some other stuff. Yeah. So who does that? Who does like the electronics that spews off, okay, I just want the position data out of the statement that comes off that chip? You guys developed that yourself, or is there? like a
No,
package that,
no, we were reading that data. Yeah, you can buy interfaces to those that just read data into like a flowing spreadsheet. I mean, you can just pull that data raw and process it. So
It's in plain text, Rob.
I know it is, but there's a lot of data in the sentence.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
Different.
A lot of the time-based stuff was really important, and
Right.
because we also were looking into Doppler effects and trying to find out where a rocket was based on time differentials too. We experimented a little bit with that in terms of multiple receivers, multiple antennas looking up, and the time from the standardized time basis. What was the difference between the various receivers that we may have, 10, 20, 30 miles away pointed up. But the base of that development, we never pursued that to production, but the base of it was the super accurate time base in these synchronized time bases in GPS chips.
Yeah, there's different, they call them sentences.
Right.
That have different, each sentence has a certain set of parameters that it transmits, and you, depending on what you need, if all you need is time Latin long, you say, I only want the sentence, the ABC sentence, I don't want the DEF sentence.
So you're talking about there's a controller for that. You have a controller?
Well, I have seen, I haven't done it myself, but I have seen a couple of videos on doing it with an Arduino, and you get what they call a library in the Arduino.
Okay. So you need a little piece, you need a little processor for that.
You need some sort of software that's going to be able to take the output of the receiver, take the output of that text, and translate that into, lat long, time, or any of the other data that it spews out. And there's a load of data. There's a whole bunch of different sentences, and you just pick the one or two sentences that you want, and then you parse the data and say, I want, the first 12 characters, and then the 18th to the 25th, or what, however.
Yeah, parsing the data is that's right.
Funny,
I'm not really an electronics engineer. I've always been a technician or an engineering technician kind of guy. So a lot of this stuff is new to me. I'd have to study up on it. So, but if I bought one of those chips, because of my Fox in a Box, my first Fox in a Box, I was so annoyed by the fact that if I removed power, I lost the clock and I lost all of the ability to run on a schedule. So then the thing would revert to just a simple beacon mode, and I didn't want that. I want a definite on and off time. So other than coming up with a coin battery, which I did, I was looking at doing a GPS thing. So I've been experimenting with using a GPS receiver, which it updates. I know it's updating, and I know it's putting out a sentence. I've seen the sentence, but I'm looking to strip off what I need out of that sentence, which is just the time. So
It's sort of funny you mentioned that, Rob. Yesterday I finished this. It's a QRP Labs. I don't know whether you could see it here or not. That top PC board that's in here is a QRP Labs GPS receiver.
it looks like one.
And it has the patch antenna in it.
Yeah.
The whole smear for like $20, $22, something like that. And I have it connected to their clock. And their clock takes all that information. There's a processor in it. This is my wife's butter jar I swiped. And the clock mechanism has the ability to take the NMEA sentence strips from the GPS, and then you can program it through the processor on the front panel, so you can display whatever you want on the clock. Latitude, longitude, time offsets, alarms, relays. I think the clock was $23 and the GPS was $12 or something like that. And there's a little 5-volt regulator in the back that takes it 12 volts, changes it to 5 volts. The clock runs on 5 volts, and also provides the 3-volt power for the GPS.
Right.
You could also, you can remote that antenna, that patchy antenna. But I didn't want to do that because there's a backplane built into the PC board. And that's why it's in a little plastic box. But anyhow, the whole thing only cost me, $40 or so. Until the wife finds out I swiped her container, but.
Then it's gonna cost you a lot more.
Like John was saying, you can easily program this thing to display like 4 lines of any kind of data that you want on there, latitude, longitude, time, whatever. Pretty neat. Anyhow.
Very cool.
For a lot of the, well, I know for the Arduino, you can get real-time clocks, and I think there's a real-time clock chip that you can get that you could integrate easily, he said, because he can't do it, easily integrated with pretty much any microprocessor, I would imagine, like a Raspberry Pi, or I think, what are you using
There's an EEPROM in this that already programmed by QRP Labs, and it has everything already in it. Now you could change that and reprogram it if you want to, but I just take the CAN chip, plug it in, and everything's in there.
A real-time clock, you need some sort of a power source.
Right. You'd have the GPS itself has a battery on board to keep it keeps track of all the what do they call that, Eric? All the information from the GPS, the satellite positions, and all that. It keeps track of that when it loses power, and the battery keeps that up.
Yeah, there's a buffer of some sort.
Read-only memory.
So.
By the way, we used things. We could have used Arduino. We ended up using a basic stamp, and the whole rocket ran on a basic stamp. So the whole lines of code and some very interesting code, but it was a basic stamp versus an Arduino. That was at the heart of the.
Some of those can be pretty fast.
Yeah, it was reliable, robust. We also had issues. It was interesting things that we had to deal with that we wouldn't normally. Is out in the desert, you get these winds that are whipping with dry sand, low humidity. The static is insane. So we had to really kind of harden the vehicle and use sometimes technology that was a little inferior, but less prone to a static issue. So yeah, it was interesting stuff. Not only just space flight, but actually just environmental issues and the basic.
I'm not going to get used to that anytime soon. WNNRG repeater. Lou, congrats on the new call.
Thanks.
Appropriate.
I thought it would be fun.
Well done.
There were a lot of folks who had LMR. So I had a hunt for a while on the FCC website to, see what wasn't taken, but there were a couple. So actually, I just wanted to kind of shorten up my call sign too. So did both.
Oh, good. Good. Wear it well. It was good to hear you on the net the other morning. Yesterday morning?
Yeah, I guess I should have known that was happening I just happened to have my radio on, and I'm like, oh, there's something going on. So let me just kind of, join it.
Oh yeah, we've been doing it every Saturday for a little over a year.
Yeah. So yeah, fun. I didn't have much to say this week. I'll try to have more next week.
Okay.
As long as you get on and say something, that's what counts.
I'll have a bigger breakfast, I guess. I'll have more to talk about.
I don't know, Lou, you're always going to find someone that has a lot to say. Just make your call sign and say hi, and someone else will have something to say, I'm sure of it.
And it'll always be followed by Rob for another 20 minutes.
There you go.
That's right.
I was actually, I saw the email that Bart just sent out. I guess it was a little while ago. I'm not sure. But I was, pretty intrigued by, I guess, what you used to do, growing like humongous sized pumpkins. I saw
I'm
that
sure
that
it
was
puzzles
what,
people when they get my email, why I'm,
1,579 pounds. Was that like the world record?
oh, no, not even close. Not even close.
So my wife said to me, what do you do with a pumpkin that big? So tell me what to tell her.
Make a very big pie.
Man,
A very big
I won't do that.
jack-o'-lantern?
No, a boat,
A
right?
You
boat?
can make a boat, yes. That's one of the options. You turn them over and cut the bottom out and scoop out the stuff, and then you put them in a lake or a pond, and you have a pumpkin regatta. Sometimes they put electric trolling motors on them. Be a lot of fun.
Jeez.
Other times they sell them to casinos and car dealers, and Stu Leonard's buys them. And they just stick them on a pile of pallets in front of the store as a
Mhm.
display. So, you know, sometimes you just make a jack-o'-lantern, a big one. But
Pretty
the world,
cool.
I'm not even close to the world record. The world record currently is around 2,600 pounds.
Whoa,
wow.
wow.
Jeez.
What's the size of the pumpkin, diameter and all?
Big.
Let's see if we could launch one into space, Eric. Attach a
Yeah.
rocket to it.
The
There's a
strap
guy
to,
in- there's a guy in France who had a big pumpkin one year and made it into a boat. And I think they put 11 people in it.
Wow.
That's a big
11
pumpkin.
people.
Yeah.
Oh,
But I have a picture of one somewhere where I'm standing behind it with my arms stretched out, and I can reach 6 feet, and the pumpkin's that big. You know, and they're more than waist high.
That's
They get big.
crazy.
Yeah.
So what, Jeff, was that your thought regarding pumpkins in space? Who said that?
Yeah, put a rocket on it and launch one into space.
So this is not space, but there's a model rocketry club, high power rocketry club, called right here in Connecticut called Cato Rocketry Club. They launch in Durham and a couple other places. And in the fall, every fall, they've been doing this for forever. They do the pumpkin chunkin contest, and it's unbelievable. And basically, it's just to launch pumpkins as high as you can and let them smash. And they do that every, it's really, it's a blast. So
I'm in the wrong hobby.
I have a bunch of guys in Delaware who do that every year.
it's so cool.
They do the pumpkin chunkin.
Yeah, there was something on TV.
Yeah.
There
Cannons.
was a contest where someone had to make like trebuchets and launch pumpkins as far
Yeah.
as they could. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that is
Build
really
something-
cool.
Yeah.
And then they build cannons that run on compressed air.
Yeah.
The guys actually grow specific pumpkins just for that purpose. So that the shells are harder and thicker so that they don't disintegrate in the barrel.
Yeah. I've seen a few of those and just almost mush just comes out of the front. So yeah, they got to have a good strong shell.
But I saw a video clip of guys with a trebuchet that actually threw 1,000-pound pumpkin.
Wow.
That's a big trebuchet.
I mean, those
Yeah.
things used to break down castle walls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their original intention.
I wonder if you have to go through a security check to get one of those trebuchets, just pumpkins.
Nah,
You would think. that
We-
could
we
be
had a-
weapons too.
Ted, we had a
No
scout troop
explosives.
that made one.
I remember making trebuchets at summer camp with the scouts, and we would launch water balloons at the next campsite over.
That's what we were doing. We were down in Hammonasset. We're having this huge like jamboree, and
Was that around like 94, 95?
that was in the that was late. That's correct. Yeah, it was late 90s.
Yeah, I think we might have been the guys on the other side.
You were one of the other guys, yeah, because
Yeah.
we were like, okay, we got to have like 1 million balloons, fill them all with water.
Yep.
You got these big barrels that have nothing but these water balloons, and we're just launching them left and right. It was hilarious.
All right, there's your next project, Sean. Figure out how to launch water balloons on Zoom.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, I'm afraid of what's going to happen when the pandemic's over and you guys try some of these things.
Well, we always got a target, Ted. Just be on the lookout.
Always.
So Bart, where do you get the seeds for those pumpkins? You don't go to Burpees and order them. You breed them and
Pumpkin seeds are another whole world. We plant seeds and make specific crosses because we don't have promiscuous pumpkins because we're always trying to produce a better generation of pumpkin seeds. So they're all protected and hand pollinated. And then at the end of the year, you save the seeds because that's why you grew the pumpkin, so you get the seeds. And the clubs then every fall start having pumpkin seed auctions where they auction off pumpkin seeds to raise money for their clubs. And I have seen pumpkin seeds. I saw a single pumpkin seed sell for in excess of $1,810 for one seed.
Makes me feel weird asking you for pumpkin seeds, Bart.
Yeah, but I don't
But
have
I-
$1,800 pumpkin seeds, Rob.
Well, I grew one I grew 4 of those plants. I started 4 of those plants. And out of those 4, 2 ended up growing and only 1 produced females. And out of that 1 plant, I had 1 40-pound pumpkin that somehow got eaten by a squirrel or a groundhog or something on the bottom. And I never knew it until it was too late.
On the bottom, it was probably a mouse.
Yeah, I don't know. I watched it every day. I put trail cameras on it just to keep track of it. And I never saw the groundhog. My elder son told me he saw a groundhog back near the garage in the way back. And I thought, okay, that's close enough to be concerned about. So I never saw him on there.
Well, they usually go after the growing tips on the plants before they go to the pumpkin. But they will go to the pumpkin and eat a hole right through the pumpkin to get to the seeds.
Yeah, that's what this guy did.
I could
Yep.
picture you like Bill Murray out there with dynamite, Rob, trying to blow him up.
Yeah, much simpler than that. I just use simple lead.
I can't do that here. I only ever had one woodchuck here, and I managed to pin him down on his back, and I stuck the garden hose over his nose. So he
Nice.
blew up like a water balloon.
Well, I'm not supposed to do it here, but I think it still happens every once in a while.
I took
Well,
out
I
eight
tried my
groundhogs.
son's pellet rifle here once. It was way too loud.
Happy dog. What's up, happy dog?
Another projectile project that you guys would really dig, just from the engineering standpoint. There was a project, and you may have seen this online because it got really popular. An engineering group wanted to see if they could project or shoot a baseball past the speed of sound, and not only do that, capture in photographs the Mach waves, the shock waves in photos as the baseball was breaking the sound barrier. And if you want to see an unbelievable, it'll blow you away. I mean, it really, the engineering behind this, the video, it's a YouTube video that's probably gotten, I don't know how many millions of hits at this point. Here, I'll paste the link. You will not believe the engineering behind it. These are really top flight engineers that put together, and it not only broke the speed of sound, it was over 1,000 miles an hour, and they got the pictures
1,050.
and the Mach waves. It was
The baseball held together.
well, I'll show you what happens to a
It
baseball
doesn't look like it held together.
when it goes.
Looks like a
I wouldn't think
coronavirus.
so.
I don't want to blow that. Your jaw will drop when you won't believe what you see because they captured it on film. It's just, so I just sent a link later on if you want something just to blow your mind, what can be done with human imagination and some good engineering and a lot of time, clearly, to build it. Anyway, just fun with projectiles.
Fun with projectiles.
Somewhat related to that, you reminded me of a video series, Eric. There's two guys, they're called the slow-mo guys, I think. And they have this $30,000 camera that takes I don't know how many millions of frames a second, but they film all types of weird stuff and show it in slow motion. Really cool.
It's
Yeah,
amazing.
it is.
Even water drops, ordinary things that we just, because we can't see it.
Yep.
That fascinating stuff.
Mhm.
I've never heard of them. If you come up with a link, send it to me.
Yeah.
I really dig that kind of stuff.
Well, talking about projectiles, I used to work for another company in Wallingford, and we made a special coaxial cable for a military project, which was the electromagnetic launcher, or if you've ever heard of like a rail gun.
Yes, sure.
So, yeah, these are like, parallel rails that they fire projectiles off of. And when they came to us, this was actually the Navy came to us and they said, the cables that we're using don't stay secure and we can't tie them down because there's so much, energy involved that they just want to go flying all over the place. So we designed a special coaxial cable that, kind of solved the whole thing. But the trouble with these rail guns is that, when you fire them, they're great. I mean, you can fire projectiles at, all kinds of, hyper velocities, but, it's storing the energy and then, recharging. So that's why they've never really become commercial, because they had, the idea of using them on aircraft carriers to launch planes and, launching satellites into low Earth orbits, and,
Right.
as a tank weapon. But, you fire it and then you got to wait like an hour for the thing to recharge,
Right.
So that was the problem. But the cable worked. That was the good news.
It's an interesting discussion here, but where I work, some of the machine tools that we make, the place I work, we make jet engine components, rotating jet engine components, and typical CNC machine tools. But some of the ones are fairly advanced. We've got one machine. It's made by this Italian company, and it's not unique to Italy or anything else. They're fairly common. Some of you may be familiar with the way CNC machine tools work. They have a ball screw, and the ball screw is attached to a moving part that's attached to a motor. You put a servo drive on it and you command it. You tell it where you want to go and it goes there. These machines use maglev type technology. They do not have ball screws. They have what we call linear or torque motors. And this one machine has absolutely no ball screws. It's very accurate. You cannot rough hog with it. In other words, you can't do rough cuts. It's a finesse machine, but it's capable of 4,000 inches a minute on a velocity, which is very fast. If you think about it, that thing would just go through the side of a casting if it ever got out of control. So we still use that. We use that to this day. So it's kind of interesting that it's not just, maglev trains in Italy and Europe and Japan and whatnot. It's not just, propelling a device through a gun as like a gun, but it's also in CNC technology now as well.
How big is that? What is the scale? Give us a frame of reference for size.
So the machining cavity itself is perhaps, it's capable of a 42-inch part.
Oh.
So a 42-inch part's very large, but it's a largest machine. It's 42,000 kilograms in weight, and totally electronic. No physical ball screws or moving parts like that. It's all electronic, and it's very fast. It's got a Heidenhain, which is a German type controller on it, and it's very precise. It's all digital. It's all digitally parameterized. It's got digital controls in it, and it's very precise. It's a great machine.
Just the velocity of the tool, though. That's
Yeah, it's just amazing. 4,000 inches a minute is just amazing to me. Coming from a ball screw machine, which is there's nowhere near. You're talking about 300 inches a minute.
right. Wow.
And we make jet engine parts. You guys ride on it. If you fly in a plane, you probably rode on one of our parts.
You work with Pratt, UTC, or
Pratt, GE, Snecma, every jet engine maker from regional to everyone.
That's great. Keep them flying, Rob.
Keep them flying, buddy. We've we used to make space balls. We used to have an EB electron beam welder and an X-ray lab and all that stuff. And we used to make these what we call space balls. But what it is, it's a liquid oxygen container for the space shuttle. And we also used to make a liquid oxygen pump for the space shuttle. And we did that in our Newington facility. It was the only facility that was certified for it.
Wow. Connecticut had, well, still does, but lots of resources for aerospace.
Yes.
It's a little state. It's really, it powers a lot of our industry, which is great.
It sure does. There's a lot of technology here in this little state of ours, and I'm very happy to work for a company that never thought about this when I was living in DC, in the DC area. I'll tell you that much.
You know, it's neat. It's neat stuff, and you're building stuff that actually sometimes engineers will work on a part that's so small it's going to be in something that's insignificant and you never know. But at least you know where the end result of your labor is, right?
That's right.
Well, that's pretty cool.
There's a lot of those companies hidden around Wallingford, Meriden, in the industrial parks and what have you.
That's true.
Makes us high risk for when the commies nuke us.
Always been a target.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah. We've been
That was actually a concern for our company because we do a lot of stuff for military, in Wallingford at times.
Right.
And, for a long time, that was the only facility that we had. It was, we're making cable assemblies for, radar jammers and radar warning receivers and all of that. So now we have a facility in West Palm Beach and in Mesa, Arizona. Because that was a concern for, Lockheed.
You said Mesa?
Yeah, Mesa, Arizona.
Mesa, yeah.
a lot of the explosive stuff that we were getting from Ensign Bickford in Avon. Just amazing company, aerospace company. And
Got a friend that works there.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
They did some really cool stuff.
Yep, that's what he says.
A lot of stuff, you have to go in there, you got to sign a waiver, you only certain rooms you can go in.
Yep.
No matter what your clearance is, there's a lot of places you can't go.
Yeah, one of our engineering managers that just retired, he used to work for Ensign Bickford many years ago.
Yeah.
If you guys knew him, Bob Shrubus.
Shoot. No, I don't
Ring
recall.
any bells? Okay.
I don't recall.
Anyway.
There's a company here in Wallingford that makes all the hardware for Harley Davidson engines.
Mhm.
And they only use that hardware from that plant here in Wallingford.
Really?
Yeah, Connecticut has over 80 something hard targets that we protect against on a daily basis. And that goes from anything from electric boat to Sikorsky to the tobacco fields in the northern part of Connecticut. We actually have like training reactors here for nuclear meltdowns. And that's the oil fields down in New Haven. There's just so many security areas here on the East Coast. We are not in a good position. If anything.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
New York,
So there's a big
Boston,
target hanging there.
there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to work in a place that made coax cable, for example. Just that's guaranteed to be on the list.
Even Waterbury's still on the list from when they were doing brass during World War II.
That's
Yeah, I
true.
understand we were like 20th on the Germans' bombing list.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's actually probably we're
Had great hopes that they could develop what they called the New York bomber that would be capable of flying over the Atlantic. As a matter of fact, it was
What do you got there?
on atmospheric.
Westinghouse, yep.
There you go. I spent many years in that place.
What's that? 10 to 10. What were you saying?
What was that?
I thought you were saying something.
Yeah, the Germans were working, well, they had like on paper designed for what would be this super bomber that would fly up to the edge of space and it would be able to make a bombing run across from Germany, across the Atlantic, bomb the United States, and then using atmospheric skip, go right around the world back and land back in Germany. Very ambitious plan, but of course they didn't have the materials that would be necessary to build such a craft. But on paper, it looked fantastic. And of course, Hitler thought it was the greatest thing in the world and probably diverted, I don't know how much of their resources away from other production to try to build these things. So we were just lucky he was crazy enough to think that they could make it work.
Well, some of the stuff they engineered in World War II was really, I don't want to say cutting edge, but bigger and better was their kind of motto with all the tanks.
Yeah.
They certainly had the engineering to do what they wanted to. They
Oh, yeah.
just didn't
Porsche,
have the
Crufts.
resources.
Resources.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Mhm. Like I said, we were lucky because trying to build these super weapons, they diverted a lot of manpower and resources into these projects, taking away from building the stuff that they could have actually used.
I disagree, Ted. I don't think there was any luck to it. I just think we had bigger resource pockets than they did.
Well, that too, but like I say, they wasted a lot of their time chasing these weapons that they just couldn't possibly have gotten built.
Now they just make nice cars.
Mhm.
Yep,
Yep.
no doubt about that.
You know, it's kind of interesting too. I remember reading somewhere that at the end of the war, you know, as part of the reparations, I guess Britain was offered a Volkswagen, and they turned it down. And boy, that would have been a moneymaker for them.
Wow.
Oh. Indeed.
It was kind of, well, who's going to want to buy one of those things?
I would in a minute.
Hmm.
We used
First
to.
thing, first thing they would have done is figure out how to make them leak oil.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, they probably would have screwed it up. Well, my first car was an MGB.
Oh,
Yeah, there you go, John. Here you go.
Yeah.
There's
All I
one
did
in
every
my,
weekend was put it back together again.
We're gonna put you and John B together. That's it.
there's
Yeah.
one in my garage.
I think the Triumphs were noted for that too. Wasn't that the
Yeah.
one they said when you buy a British car, you had to buy a British mechanic to go with it?
That's about right.
Well, Jim, I'm sure you know why the British drink warm beer, right? They have Lucas refrigerators.
Who's Jim? Oh, Jim Cook. Okay, got it.
Oh, yeah, they're warm.
Lucas made the electrical systems in MGs and Triumphs both, and they were, just notorious for
Oh, yeah.
Lucas, the Prince of Darkness.
They were fun cars, but you had to have a little knowledge to keep one running.
Oh God, I kept mine running for a long time. I bought it new, and it's sitting rusting away in my garage. It hasn't run in 20, 30 years, well, something like that. But
Not a good sign when you can't keep up with the decades.
yeah, it's I had a lot of fun in that.
What's your excuse, Bart?
I don't try.
Had a lot of fun in that car. But learned a lot.
Mhm. I used to go road rallying in it too. I don't know if any of you guys have ever road rallied before.
Oh, I've been in a road rallies. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Mhm.
What's that, Lou? That like Cannonball Run?
Like time, speed, distance events, you have to be at certain places at the right time.
Yes.
You get penalized for being early or late.
Yeah,
And there's
start and finish points and then
Yep.
checkpoints in between.
If you ever hear Rich WA1TRY on the air, just whisper the words road rally,
Wait, I thought that's what our fox hunt was.
and then
Drive as fast as you
Yeah,
can without getting caught by the
someone-
police.
It's very similar.
just mention that to Rich, and then just sit back and relax for an hour while he times out the repeater 12 times, telling you about his rally days.
Mhm.
Turn left where the old schoolhouse used to be. That
Well,
was my favorite.
We'll let the dust settle, huh?
Anyway.
So coming up in an hour here. Anything that we needed to solve?
Yeah, anybody got any questions or
Yeah,
comments?
nobody had a question tonight.
I actually have a real question relating all the way back to the beginning topic. We were talking about fox
Okay.
hunting.
Okay.
So in all the sci-fi movies I've watched, you always hear about this tactical thing called triangulation.
Yeah.
To me, it looks just like what we're doing with fox hunting, but
Yeah, it
maybe a little different. How is that the same? How is it different? What are they doing?
We did triangulation in the fox hunts early on, and what we learned from that was it took too much time to coordinate all of that and do all the triangulation. In the meantime, Jeff, AKN, will just drive to the Fox. So we don't do it anymore.
The problem with triangulation and the solution of triangulation, it can be accurate, but when you're dealing with multipath
Yeah.
distortion,
Difficult.
it becomes very difficult because you're dealing with a false, okay, I've got a signal from true 233 degrees, when in reality, you're just getting some anomaly. You're getting a refraction from a building, a fence, or something else. So when you go down there and you're going to this intersection because this other guy gave you a spot, now you've got an intersection. You're going to the intersection, you take a reading, and you find out it's 30 degrees off.
Yeah.
It
Well, another
happens a
thing-
lot.
Yeah, another thing you have to keep in mind is in order to do triangulation properly, you also have to know with good precision where each of you are. Because if you say, okay, from my position, I'm taking a bearing and I find it's 60 degrees from here. Well, in order for that to make sense to everybody else who's also taking bearings from over there and over there and over there, you have to know right where you are.
We used to do that,
Because-
Ted.
Yeah,
We did. We would have
you
known
have to be as
starting
close as
location.
possible because you build in errors as you go along, because you say, well, I'm near this place. That's not good enough, you know?
Yeah,
And-
you need to really, there's software that you can get that networks and talks to each other. And uses a tablet or a
Sig tracks.
cell phone.
Yeah.
I've
And
had
you-
this. See you later, Brian.
Good night, Brian.
And
But it still comes down to you got to trust the other guy that he's putting a good bearing in. So it's the skill of getting the bearing and being able to interpret what you're seeing and what you're hearing that really makes the difference.
Oh, hello, I'm Gavin.
Yeah, we started out with one common map for everybody. We would plot our locations that we're starting from, so that when I gave a bearing from my location, everybody looked at the same map and said, oh, Rob's here and he's 233, they draw a line. And then Bob said, he's here, he draws a line, and someone else draws a line, someone else draws a line. Now we've got 3, 4, 5, 6 lines that have some sort of error built into it because of some sort of magnetic local anomaly or reflection anomaly. That's now, we're just going to have to drive towards it and take new bearings. It just took too long. And Jeff's method, which was oversimplistic, was just drive until the signal peaks out and move to the lesser frequency, the less power frequent transmitter, and use that to further refine getting close to it. And eventually you get down to the 1 milliwatt signal, and you're talking
on top
about
of it.
literally 300 yards, 100, 400 yards at the most. You go by a street that he's down the end of the street, your signal peaks as you're driving by, it drops. You go back to that street, go down there, and you find Dave.
Hey, Rob, could I share my screen for a second? I'll show you a picture of my main lane DF machine.
You bet. It's done.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to run, fellas.
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks,
See
Eric.
you,
See you
Eric.
later, buddy.
Hey, see you there, Eric.
Yeah.
I'm gonna miss-
Eric.
I don't know if I know how to do this here. Share screen. All right. There we go. Hope you
Yeah,
can see it.
there you go. Oh,
Nice. I want that.
That's
Yeah,
an
yeah.
A&ML.
Isn't that LYP's truck?
That's
Yeah,
a
that-
log periodic, isn't it?
That's wideband log periodic and two radomes. There's different tuner heads up in the top of that thing.
You did a nice job on that, Jim.
Yeah,
That's
that
crazy.
was considered the electronic warfare Cadillac of the late 60s. That thing would work with upwards of 40 gigs. Some of those different radomes that would go into that thing. But
Really?
anyhow, I thought you get a kick out of that.
Good.
That's cool.
I get back.
See you, Lou.
hey, take care, Lou.
See
Jim,
you.
what era was that from? That's not
That would
World
have
War
been,
II.
that would have been 68,
Yeah,
late
look later.
60s. Yeah. Well, a lot of that stuff they were still using in Vietnam, Korea.
Yeah.
So that was all, 400 cycle. A good bit of it was still vacuum tube. All the microwave stuff was all TWTs and BWOs, and you had to be careful working on that. No 12 volts. You reach in there, you're liable to get 1500 volts off.
They have BLTs too.
Yeah, they all kind of BLTs with tomato.
Mayo and mayo.
Yeah.
You 812s in there too.
Oh, I see you 812. That's
Using
funny
that,
stuff.
that magnetic loop, Jim?
Yeah, that's the chameleon loop back there. I had that on 10 megs today, and I couldn't hear one single station. I don't know where the bands were dead or what was going
10
on.
megs or 10 meters?
See you, Bart. Oh, I missed.
What's that, Mark?
Bart's gone.
He left.
I said 10 megs or 10 meters?
Oh, I had it on today on 10 megs. Yeah, 10.1, 30 megs, 30 meters. I'll get it right yet.
Oh, okay.
And deader in the doornail. I couldn't hear anything on there for
Yeah, someone was saying that the bands were utterly dead today for some reason.
Isn't
Thank
today International Amateur Radio Day?
It sure is.
yeah, 18th, right? Yeah.
Yep.
We're encouraging everybody to get on and make contacts and
Weird.
Yeah, every amateur is required to get on the air today.
Yeah.
Oh,
Required.
whoops.
Then all
Right.
the bands are dead.
We're on the air, aren't we?
Yeah.
Sort of.
you're on wireless, you're on the air.
I am on wireless. We're using radio. That's correct.
Did you see the email that Al sent?
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah. I was going to nominate him for the Club Owl. He says, who?
Yeah.
Well, I'll have my first HT arriving tomorrow with any luck. Or HF radio.
What'd you get?
I got the Zygu.
Oh, nice.
the
Okay.
G90 there. So it's not quite a QRP and not quite a 100 watt, but should do the trick of what I'm looking to do.
Which one is it?
The Zygu G90.
Oh, G90. I have one of those. That's a nice little radio.
Oh, okay.
I love it.
Yeah, and all the reviews and everything, it kind of looked like it was gonna fit that needs for all my first radio, and until I get 10 others that do the other things too, I guess.
You got an antenna for it?
I picked up the Encom 3. It's a Pactenna.
A what?
So it's a end-fed Pactenna.
Oh, NFED. Okay.
Yeah. And not a permanent antenna, even though it's waterproof and nuclear proof and all that other good stuff. But enough that I can put it up here and run the coax into the house and still be able to transmit without disrupting everything else in here.
So Steve Allen, KC1SA.
Yes.
Remember, he's got an NFED. He's got a hex beam and an NFED. So the NFED is good for up to 160 meters.
Mhm.
And he uses it to contest with. He has zero problems with that thing.
Good to know. Yeah, it was out of all the ones that I was going through, I'm like, do I want to put something up on the house? Like, do I want to do the dipole? Do I want to do the disco stuff like that? And I'm like, want something I can actually bring camping with,
Yeah.
and also have set up at the house, because I don't have enough to invest in multiple different setups. So I need this kind of one setup to be able to be the buffet.
Good it's good multi-purpose antenna. I've got one myself it's a secondary as a backup antenna. So I go over to my brother's house. If I go hunting down in Virginia or some other place, I can bring that up, throw it up in a tree somewhere and run that to the campsite. And yeah, I have zero problems. That thing gets out. And I have a problem with 160 on it, but 80 meters seems to be able to load out pretty good.
Okay.
Is it, Rob?
It's an alpha.
You know how long?
Oh, yeah, you're gonna ask me that. I'd have to go measure it, John. I don't remember now.
I use an infant on my G90. I think it's 135 feet long. I can't get it to load on 80 for some reason. Maybe it's just the way I have it configured up. It's supposed to work on 80. It works pretty well.
So Jim, with that, you found that you just put the end fed in and hit the antenna tuner, and it does everything that.
I use the antenna tuner on the. Well, I checked it beforehand to make sure the antenna is halfway decent on the frequency that I'm going to use, and then the antenna tuner in the G90 just makes a few clicks and ready to go.
Add about 15 feet of coax and see what happens.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have about 50 feet of underground coax on it right now. And there's I think it's a 9-to-1 balling on the, right on the feed point.
Yeah, a lot of times, that's an old trick. A lot of times you're just at a point on the Smith chart where the tuner just can't find a match. And you add some coax and you move, the SWR doesn't change, but you move the impedance
just a little bit
to a different point that the tuner likes.
I followed your advice back so many years ago, John, about that very thing. And I came to your shop and you sold me some coax and I put it as a choke right in the feed line, just underneath my off center fed. And that thing loads out just perfectly. And I know it's not perfect, but it does a nice job. I can get out in contest with this antenna that I've got. So those little tips and tricks actually work out usually to some degree.
Well, I probably sold you the magic coax too on that.
Oh, sure. I'm sure.
Well,
it was your homegrown coax, came right out of the ground.
I put special electrons in that coax, so.
Yeah, well, you pulled it right out of the ground. I saw the roots come out and everything.
Came with free smoke.
I used to have on my old website, I had a picture of copper wires, solid copper wires stuck in a little flower pot.
Yep.
And had a little story about how I grew my own antenna wire, and these were the seedlings. So I might go back to doing something with that. I don't know.
I thought it was fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bound to be at least one person who believes it.
Nobody believes it, but it's funny. It's hilarious. I thought
You'd
it
be
was
surprised, Rob, with some people who believe.
You might be right, Ted. You might be right on that.
We've seen too many examples of what some people believe. So.
Yep.
Yeah, really,
True
lately.
I remember seeing it was one of these shows on TV a long time ago, and apparently over in England they did one of these gag news broadcasts, and they were supposedly telling the people about the spaghetti harvest in Italy. And they had video of people picking spaghetti off the branches of trees.
Oh, I've seen
And
that.
collecting it in baskets. And they actually had a woman who wrote in and said, I always wondered how they made that.
See,
So believe me, there's always somebody out there who'll believe anything.
It's probably on YouTube by now, but I remember seeing that years ago.
Yeah.
It was a BBC thing.
Yeah.
I gotta run, gents. Have a good night.
Okay.
Take
All
care.
right, Jeff.
Yep. See you later.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
I better
P-
get out of
PT.
here.
PT Barnum had a statement like that
Yeah.
for that
Yeah,
What, there's a sucker born every minute?
sucker born every minute.
he was an optimist.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna say goodnight too, guys.
Sayonara, fellas.
Okay, all right.
John, if
Everybody
you're around tomorrow, swing down to the shop. So then we talked about the power supply thing. It's
Okay.
the circle and the square plug. If that
Circle and the
narrows it
square.
down to you.
Oh,
I know that there's an adapter that you can do to put on it to make it power poles, and that's what most do with it.
bring the radio when you get it.
Okay.
All right, and I'll take a look and I'll see what we can figure out.
All right. Thank you much. There we go.
Sounds good. Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Night.
All right, John.